welcome to the Embodied Psyche. My name is Hannah Bernstein, and I'm thrilled to be here today with Ana del Castillo. Ana is a women's rightness expert and empowerment coach. How are you, Ana?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm really thrilled to be here with you and to have this conversation.
Thank you. Me too. So let's hop right into it. What is rightness?
I love this question. So rightness to me is, especially as it applies to women, it's not, let me tell you what it isn't first. It's not self-righteousness. It's not, I'm right and you're wrong and you're a jerk and I'm the greatest thing to ever walk the face of the earth. It's not, I have to have things turn out the way I want or else like my world falls apart. It's not magical thinking. It's not any of those things. So what is it then? It is having so much deep-seated, what I call spine, where instead of we're like this, but like erect spine, so that the slings and arrows and the disappointments and the ways overt and subtle that relationships or people at work or our family or things like that have a way of, at times, slings and arrows of that, right? The disappointments, the sort of subtle and overt put downs, the way sometimes situations feel demeaning or demoralizing or disappointing. How to not have our sense of self and our self-esteem be out there in those things, but actually have it deeply rooted in who we are so that all those things can happen, but I stay right and upright with myself. Where something will happen, and let's say I mess up or I make a mistake, I am not a mistake. I'm not the mess up. I'm actually still like a valid person with true worth and can be responsible and can still forge forward.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I especially love the link to the body, that rightness is about uprightness here in the spine. Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. How did you uncover this process?
Well, like most people, like if I were to ask you, like, well, how did you come to the, your particular superpower in life? How most people come to their superpower is through their kryptonite. And so I came to it through my kryptonite, which was, I grew up in a household, like a lot of people, that was deeply challenging. Starting at 5 years old, I had parents who had personality disorders. One was a malignant narcissist, the other one was a covert one. And it was violent, it was sexually violent, it was sort of a frightening childhood to grow up inside of. And then so there wasn't a lot of rightness, and there wasn't a lot of like personal power. I learned the exact opposite growing up inside of that. And somehow, I think part of it is just, I have my own moxie. I'm Cuban and Jewish, and I take after certain family members in my household. And so like there's a certain moxie that I have. And so inherent in like who I am was this level of like, you don't think I can do that? Fangula to you, you watch me. And so I ended up doing a lot in my life because of that. I ended up like, being on Broadway and touring, like moving to New York and being on Broadway and touring the country and singing for, like and then I accomplished a lot. Some of that was not just like, some of it was more moxie and less rightness, because there was a part of me that was like in reaction to everybody. Oh, you don't think I can? Fuck you. I don't know if I can curse on this. Can I curse? Okay, great. Like, you don't think, fuck. And I got to a certain point. I remember I was like, I reached a certain pinnacle. I was like on a Broadway stage, and I was performing with someone who was like one of the people I admired greatly. And I remember listening to him sing like pitch perfect. He was like album CD pitch perfect, like as though it wasn't even like live. And I remember thinking, I've reached a milestone moment. I don't feel anything. How interesting. And then I sort of moved on because there was something that I had that was just like Kevlar around me. Fast forward, not that fast forward, I had an event in my life that ripped a lot of that defenses down, which was my father and my brother were both murdered, and it was like a horrible murder, like gangland style. They had been tortured. It was just like it. And I was in a fight with my dad during that time.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. This was over 20 years ago. And when that happened, it ripped whatever defenses that I'd had. I'd already been in therapy. I'd already been working through stuff like that. But this was a strong enough hit to the Kevlar that I had that I had to rework myself from the ground up. So when I tell you that I had a lot of wrongness in my life, a lot of wrongness, a lot of things that I felt guilty about, a lot of stuff that I had been dealing, like so much. And at a particular point, this was many, like decades and decades ago, I made a sort of do or die commitment to myself, which was I don't even know why I said this or thought this to myself. I thought, I don't know what I have to do or where, or like what I have to feel, but no part of me is going to be disenfranchised, unloved, unseen, or ungotten. I am going to figure out how to love every part of myself, no matter what. And so it started a decades long, I can get emotional about that, like a decades long, like a number of decades long. A lot of the time it was stumbling around the dark. There was nothing out there for the kind of recreation of like neuronal pathways that I did at the time. Now there's tons more out there in terms of like trauma and working through and somatic and so I figured out in real time on the ground, like boots on the ground, how to make myself right in a world that looked, in a life that looked very, very wrong. And as I did that, you know, I don't want to say magically, but like genuinely there was a correlation between me making myself right and my world mirroring that. Like each step that I took that I got right with myself, my world started to mirror that as well, and on and on and on and on and on.
Beautiful. Yeah. So as you're talking about the wrongness of the past, I'm imagining things like insecurity, doubt, feeling like we're making a mistake, feeling like we're crazy, and then finding ways to combat that and come
feeling like I was doomed, feeling like who would want me, who would let, like my life and the regrets that I had about, like, you know, not reaching out to my dad the day that he died. You know, I'd had an instinct to reach out to him the day that he died, and I was like, no, I'd not. Again, I had my good reasons for it, and the forgiving myself for all of the ways that I just didn't know how to do it better. Forgiving the people in my life who also did not know how to do it. Feeling the feelings. Like I'm one of those people that literally can't get to forgive. I can't spiritually bypass anything. And so and that's part of what it is that I teach and coach and speak about, is that there's literally no way to skip over parts of yourself to get whole. You know what I mean? There's just like no way to do that. And so, yeah, what you're talking about is the negative, just like you don't even have to have a dramatic life like I've had. Everyday people have lots of negative self-talk. Oh God, what a jerk I was. What an idiot. God, I did that so wrong. Oh, I look so fat. I don't know what to do with myself. Like we have a constant negative chatter. And you know, the gift of what it is that I went through is that I actually know how to like address that and work with that, so that that chatter and that relationship to self becomes a happier marriage, as opposed to the Cold War that most of us are sitting inside of in our own systems.
Beautiful. I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing that process with us.
Yeah.
How do you find that all of this work that you've done on yourself translates to your work with clients?
I love this question. So there's a relationship. I don't know why I get teary-eyed when I think of this. There's a relationship I have to myself where I listen deeply. I see the parts that try to get away with things, try to do shortcuts, try to hate on, parts, get ashamed, get sad, get afraid, I've spent so many, it's not just dark nights of the soul, but like I so exquisitely listen to myself and spend real time leaning in that it has given me a X-ray superpower vision and insight into the women I work with. It's not just that. I so truly, and by the way, I'm human. Like there's ongoing work that I do all that. It's not like I'm like, oh, I'm healed. I'm not. It's an everyday relationship, that I cultivate. But because I'm inside of my own game with myself, like, that's a spot I didn't quite love myself in. Okay. I can see, feel, hear, grasp all of the nuanced and overt ways that women don't love themselves. And then speak to it. Like the kind of work that I do with women is, first, I create an atmosphere where genuinely women are accepted and loved in a way that's palpable and genuine, reframed all the time, not from like some cookie cutter. No, no. There's no like rah, sis, boom, bah shit. It's, who are you as a human being? Let's meet that fully. Let's like palpably love it. And then watch that thing alchemize into something else. Does that land?
Very, very much. Yeah. And part of what I'm just sitting with as I listen to you is how phenomenally different it is from a lot of the messaging I've heard and still see transmitted. I come from this psychological education where we do a lot of pathologizing and, there's a lot of wrong alongside healthy or something, which is rare. And it's just, as you're speaking these words, I recognize so much truth in it. Like when I'm doing my work, I feel like the best thing I'm doing is really, really loving my clients until they can see the good in themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love what you're saying. When I take on a client, especially depending on where they're at, I say flat out to some, some need more system holding than others. But if it's someone who's been for decades, let me say this one thing first. There's no amount of self-hatred, self-loathing, flagellation of self, criticizing of self that is going to produce self-love. It's not going to produce if you want to do great things in the world, no amount of that kind of behavior is going to produce. You might produce great, like maybe you produce great things, but the cost will be enormous. Your relationships, your relationship to self, like the cost is like a black hole. It must bleed out somewhere. So there are some women that I work with where if they've been doing that to themselves for a long time, if you're going to work with me, your system, as it starts to shift towards a place of and a foundation of self-acceptance, self-love in real time, not like, I love, no. I mean, all the parts, even the parts that we don't like about ourselves, like figuring out in real time how to actually like be in relationship to those places. For a while, the structure will start to come down. And my job, just like I'm sure you understand this, is to hold the, like, I'll carry that for a little while. You don't have to carry it. You can actually fall apart a little bit. And then as we like get things back right, you hand the thing over again. And then they're like sovereign and whole. And like it's like you are sort of their training wheels to a certain degree.
Yeah, that definitely lands.
Yeah. And I would love for you to speak a little bit more about the messaging that's out there and why you think it's different.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a really clear example in my mind. I was actually sharing what I thought of as a triumph in my work with someone who I care about and love, who I want to be proud of me. And I shared this anecdote, and this person like kind of made a face like, And I was like, what? And they said something like, sounds like you're getting really, really sucked in to your client's world and their narcissism. Like you just like them so much. Like that was a problem. And they were very concerned that I wasn't seeing what was wrong with them so that I could point it out to them and help them fix it. And it's so contrary to my experience of what actually helps people that I was just kind of able to like listen to them and take that in, and also have so much compassion for the fact that that's the thing running in their head. You know, they're always self-correcting. They're always looking for how they're wrong. And my intuition and my sense of how things have come into more rightness in myself is it's just with this like loving every bit, like every granular bit. That's the part that actually helps. And sure, I can see the things in my clients where I'm like, oh, that idea is really not serving you, right? There are things like that, but I don't fix it by shaming them for it. It's more like, how can I help you get over here? It's going to feel a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. What I love about what you're saying is first that you recognize your own process, didn't defend, didn't get angry, didn't explain, didn't justify, didn't do any of that stuff. You were like, well, that's disappointing, and that's sort of sad, and that sort of had a little bit of this over here, but I know who I am and I'm doing the right thing. And I'm going to choose, like, it wasn't a fight. It wasn't like there wasn't any like that. If that is not an example of like rightness, like genuine rightness, where there's an ability to have a difference of opinion, but you don't spend a lot of energy defending, fighting, explaining, justifying, all of that stuff. That is not rightness. That's, okay, I get that. I really see that. Maybe for some other people that works, but for the people that I'm working with, they come to me for love.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel called to do some of that explaining, or I do still, so, if I'm caught up in something.
So for perspective's sake, I am Cuban, and I did my DNA. I have like a high degree of Italian. I don't know where the Italian came from. I'm also Middle Eastern, and I grew up Jewish. I bat mitzvah, the whole entire thing. All of those cultures are passionate. My household growing up is like where Hispanic people are famous for, and even Jewish, like you question and you argue everything. That's part of like inherent in the culture.
Absolutely.
And in the religion. I have the talking pen. No, that's what I grew up inside of. No, my DNA defaulted instinct is to pit bull, like, so no, I still, my ongoing lesson and journey inside of this is I'm passionate. Where to lend my passion, when not to, when to speak up. I don't want to suggest for a second that rightness doesn't sometimes look like yelling. It sometimes does. If you've been swallowing a lot of shit in your life, And you've just been like loving it, like loving them and loving them, loving them. And they've been whatever, taking advantage of the situation. Not, there's something like righteous, deeply righteous and right about finally putting a line in the sand and being like, no more. That is an act of self-love. So I don't have it. A lot of, maybe some people might think that it looks a certain way. No. Self-love and rightness looks different in each moment depending on the circumstance. Rosa Parks not sitting in the back of the bus anymore is an act of rightness. People like taking to the streets and saying no more, like that's an act of rightness in the face of something that just no longer works. So yes, and I'm in the inquiry ongoing of like, where do I fall into you're wrong? And where am I simply like coming through the hymen, so to speak, of like my next level of rightness. It's like, that was just something I needed to birth. Okay. I birthed it. Woohoo. And I also, listen, this is one of those things that I tell my women friends, my women client, like women all the time. I'm like, in a world where we're like suppressed and like, you know, quieted and we don't really have much of a voice. And so I would much rather when power comes out, I say this all the time, I'll say it again, and I get passionate about it. I would much rather when power comes up, have you burn the house down, metaphorically speaking, than have it come back inside and do damage to you. We will clean it up afterwards. I would much rather it come out.
So this brings me back to something that you said right in the beginning, which is there is a distinction between rightness and self-righteousness. So how do people discern about when they're like burning down the house in a useful way or getting into some of that self-righteousness?
Yeah. If I find myself, which I do still, if I find myself, and he said, if I'm inside of that, chances are fairly high. I'm in right, wrong, righteousness, self-righteousness, and I'm making an argument and making a case for what an asshole the other person is. By the way, you could be right. Like, genuinely.
Some people are assholes.
Yeah, I'm an asshole. You're like, we're all assholes at some point. Some people are professional assholes. There are lots and lots of assholes that walk around in life thinking that they're like awesome human beings. And that's what their job is just to like piss people off and trigger the fuck out of all of us. Do you know? They're doing their job. They're awesome. So if I'm inside of my, mind you, my first step inside of that usually is, part of why I do that is because I'm a little bit crazy on a certain level. What I mean by that is I've been made crazy where someone is behaving in a way where they think it's okay to behave a certain way. They've sort of like done something where I felt a little caught in that moment. And it like my anger and my is telling me something. So I, first and foremost, don't make myself wrong for being there. That's the first place of rightness where I'm like, look at me. I want to kill someone. Look at me. I just literally want to I let it inform me. Sometimes those spots of anger or jealousy or rage or sorrow, grief, literally inform me of a spot I didn't get or see, or a place that was deeply important to me that I didn't hear. And so I take it seriously. I let it inform me. What's the spot underneath? What is it trying to tell me? Try to quiet my brain down. So that's the first place where I bring rightness to. I'm not insane. I know I'm being insane right now, but there's a feeling underneath here that I have skipped over somehow. So my anger is perfect. Tell me what you need to tell me. I listen to it like it's a person I love. And then it gives me the gift. It gives me the nugget. And then when I get sometimes, right, I'll tell you a thing, with my now husband, but at the time we were not even engaged. This is, I don't know if I should say this. I'm going to say it.
Great.
At one point, because it doesn't necessarily it doesn't come across as flattering to me. And it was one of those places where I was surprised by myself and I didn't like it. All right. We were out to dinner one night, and like a lot of us who are entrepreneurs, sometimes like it rains and sometimes it's a drought, in terms of like money or clients and stuff like that. And he had been for a long time where it was like raining. And then all of a sudden he was like, I think that we need to start like paring down on some of our expenditures because, I'm not really sure. I think someone's, like that kind of thing. We had that kind of conversation. I had this response in me that was, I don't like that. And then I didn't like it. And then I didn't speak about it. And then there was no energy between us. And we were both like, what's happening? What's happening? And then I went, all right, 2 days later, I was just like, I have to tell on myself, I'm not happy about it, but it's the truth. And I just have to be like honest about this. I didn't like that you said that. I'm got to be honest with you that like we're serious and I want the kind of life, this is really going to put me in a different light. Like I want the kind of life where, and you're the kind of man who could do this where, and I'm not even into that, like cars or stuff, but like, if let's say I go, oh, I love that car, that like, you'd be the kind of guy that would just like have it in my driveway and there'd be a bow on it. Like, I want that kind of life. I was like, I know that sounds like shit. I'm not putting it on your shoulders, but that's genuinely a desire that I have. And he went, now, mind you, I said that and I was like in my rightness. I wasn't trying to make him. I wasn't trying to like him. I wasn't telling him he was an asshole. I wasn't any of that stuff. I was like, this is what's happening. I don't like it. And say, let me good. Wow, I discovered that this is who I am right now. Okay. And he was like, got it. Okay. The order is in. Like, meaning that he took it as a directive and like, he's going to, and I was like, he didn't make himself wrong. I didn't make him wrong. I didn't make me wrong. He didn't make, like, nothing about that was wrong. And we just went on with our dinner like it was nothing. And then I asked him to marry me. That could potentially, what I just said, could go in a lot of different directions for people. But my point inside of that is this. Sometimes stuff comes up inside of us that's different from the idea that we have about ourselves.
Sure.
That's not an idea that I have about myself. And yet it was there. And it was like part of what was there. And so I had to get right with all of those places. He and I are inside of a commitment of like all parts of us are welcome inside this relationship. And that's what fosters intimacy. And that's what fosters closeness. And so what came out of that was, let's do a lifelong commitment to each other.
Wow. So I have like a few different questions.
Oh goodness, yes.
not to shame you, nothing like that. I like this. It speaks to what I kind of conceptualize as shadow work. We're bringing things out of the shadows that we have, for whatever reason, refused to embrace. And there's some like wholeness that comes into place when we do that work. So I like it. Just the place I'm at in my own habits with that kind of stuff is, I probably wouldn't stop at that thought. I would probably make myself wrong for it and be like, well, where does this desire come from? It doesn't seem fair or something. So I guess I'm kind of curious about when you know to stop along the inquiry path.
When it doesn't go away and it's killing off life. I know where it was coming from. There's a certain way in which, and it still didn't matter. My desire was what was there. Take for instance, I'll give you an example of why knowing and the body don't communicate with each other. So all of us know how to lose weight and get into shape. All of us. You eat better, eat less, and work and move your body more. That's the short version of it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a $1 billion or more industry about the weight loss because the body and the brain are in two different like places and they're at war with each other all the time. I just recognize that I'm more at peace with the brain and the body over here and like a better marriage. And so I didn't like that about myself. I was just like, I never feel that way. I don't understand that feeling. My brain was like, that doesn't make any sense. That's completely ridiculous. I don't like that at all. And my brain was right. And yet my body was saying whatever it was saying. And on top of it, I started to like not feel really good about him. Mm-hmm. And I'm highly protective of my positive regard to him. Mm-hmm. Highly protective. Like I will guard that. I will set him up to win, and I will guard that like a motherfucker. And so sometimes the gauntlet of feeling good is like, I gotta say something that's like somatically in the space, and it's not the end of the truth. It's not the purity at the end of the sentence. It's not the truth forever and ever and ever. It's what's here right now. And if I don't say the elephant that's in the room, I will never get past to what's on the other side of this. And for me, what was on the other side of it, it was that I have been birthing a particular power and desire to be out in the world. And where a lot of times in relationships, women project it onto the men first, especially if we're in a relationship, we project it onto the men. And so there's a part of me that was like, I want this from you. But really, ultimately, what I discovered was, no, I actually want that from me. But if I didn't let myself have that, I was never going to let myself have the other one.
You had to say the thing that was the bridge.
I had to actually say the first thing. Yes.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I love that. And what you said actually takes me to the other question I kind of had, which I think you also talked about in brief before, which is that rightness isn't about overpowering someone else's desires. So in this instance, if instead your partner had had a different response, like how would you have played with that?
Well, we've had, it's like real-time relationships are two people who have differing desires and needs and wants. And so I can't tell you how I would have done it because I don't know. But I will tell you stuff that's like happened in real time with us where I'll give you an example with him. I had a part of myself, especially when there was so much good that was happening in my life. People think erroneously, I say, that like, you just want like good things. We're yearning and we're hoping and like, and like, we'll get that and that'll fix things. A lot of the times, the reason why we don't have the thing that we think we want is because we literally don't have the capacity to hold it. And having will bring up not having. So take, for instance, someone who's been sober for 20 something years, all of a sudden their life, because they've really put in the effort to be sober, like genuinely sober, their life 20 years later starts to get really, really good. They've been sober through horrible stuff over the past 20 years, right? They have kept their sobriety. Like a flush of good things will happen and they will fall off the wagon. This happens because genuinely having will bring up not having. And so I've had a flush of like really, really great things going on in my life. And what has been coming up has been this like part of me that has been, I call her I talk about part of my forte and my wheelhouse is rightness, but there's an overlap, which is recognizing and working with different personality disorders when you're in relationship with someone who has personality disorders, or if you have one yourself and you're conscious and you want to actually like actively work on it. There's a part of me that has, from my life, had a schizoid response. And schizoid is like you could dissociate and you could like sort of like not where you are, not know where you are, and I don't have it very often, but like when the really good stuff started to come up, that started to like rear its head. And I was talking through it. I was sort of tethered to the earth while I was talking through it. And I could feel on a certain level that he was not like happy about this particular part of my person. And at one point I had a conversation with him where I went, you're like putting up with this part of me and it feels terrible. And I'm asking you to actually meet it and love it and accept it as well, because that's a part of me here too. And I'm having a hard time like being, especially this part. The other parts I could be with like, all right, but this particular part, you don't have to do anything, but what I'm asking for is for you to like love it. You don't have to like take care of it, baby it, but like actually not be in resistance of it. And he was like, I don't know if I can do that. And I remember being like, genuinely, I was like, I can get teary-eyed. I was like, I understand your feeling. I have felt the same way about her my whole life. Mm-hmm. So if you want to bow out, I would understand. But like, there's no bowing out for me. I'm married to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was like, let me think about it. And then he went, like, he genuinely thought about it. And we just sat in like, I didn't try to like sell him on it. I didn't try to like convince him. No, what is there to do? And he was like, okay, all right. I'll love that. Now that's he and I. I've had other situations where I've gone, hey, this is not working. And I'm actually like, this is what I actually require to be in a particular, like you keep saying you want to be in this kind of relationship with me. This is actually the thing that I require. And there's been no like, and then I like make adjustments accordingly. I let behavior, if the person's behaving a certain way, then they don't get access to either parts of me, all of me, or like none of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It depends. So I dance with whatever's in front of me in that moment. That was a long-winded answer. Did I actually answer the question?
Like I'm really taking this in. This is helpful.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was first drawn to your work, I think, based on posts that you were making on Facebook and video clips you were putting up on Facebook. I really love them. And I think
that's good.
The first thing that caught my eye was something about you and your partner. And I think you were talking about like choosing him, like knowing he was correct for you, even before he knew it. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, it's funny. He and I were just talking about it because I'm inside of a spot in my life right now where the same feeling where I'm like, I'm choosing a particular way forward in my life where it feels very similar to the moment where I chose him. Well, before I answer the question, what exactly do you want to hear about that? The nuance. I can feel the nuance inside of your question, and I want to make sure I'm going to answer it.
Okay. I'm at a place where I feel like I've chosen someone, and it makes me feel incredibly vulnerable. So I'm really looking for answers for myself here.
Yeah, I love that. And I get teary-eyed. Choosing someone, one would think that choosing someone or something or an act or a career or a way forward is like a superhero, like getting into position to like fly. You know what I mean? Yes, but mostly no. It is the vulnerable, deeply courageous act of letting go completely of outcomes and still choose, like you're not inside of it. Like I talk about how there are like 5 levels of commitment. I'm not even going to bother with the first 3 because they're not commitment. But the last 2 are the ones where people usually get, the 4th one is where usually people get stopped and suffer enormously. 4th level of commitment is I will do everything it takes until it gets hard. And then I will blame myself, blame them, or blame God. And then I'll just keep recapitulating inside of that over and over and over again. And it's like proof that I'm doomed. If we do that, most of us are inside of that spot. Real choice, real choosing, real commitment is I will do this even if I fail, and I'm going to literally leave everything. I don't know if I'm going to win. I don't know, but I feel pulled deeply to do this. Take, for instance, if anybody's listening who has children, if I were to ask you, will your children ever starve while you're around? Most parents would be like, never. Like if, let's say there was you will do everything in your power, no matter, like you will literally be like, I don't know what's going to happen, but my child will never starve while I'm around. You'd like, it's just a what so. There's something about, pardon me. When I chose Ken, I was like, I might get crushed here. It might not work out. He might not choose me back. And I'm just going to vulnerably jump into the void and figure out how to dance with this like deep-seated desire I have, which is I just like you so much. I just want to be around you. I don't care about how. I just, the agenda of how it's supposed to look gets dropped.
I'm so moved.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell,
I can feel like the whole energy just like settled in. Because that's is that where you're at right now?
Yes. And it doesn't make any logical sense, but yes.
They never do. It never makes any logical sense. It is, I get, it is when, I don't know why, but when that feeling happens, it is when purpose, sort of your life, your purpose, and like what's meant to be, regardless of what the outcome is, somehow like magically in grace lines up. Your true north shows up.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, they're like grace-filled moments. And they're very private.
Yeah, one of the things I've been witnessing is just like, I think it has to do with rightness more than the person and the choice. It's like,
oh my God, yes, 100 times yes.
It's like everything in my life feels like so much love, not just the person. It's like every step, every choice, it's all gotten easier.
That's when there's like real rightness, is when, can you repeat that? Because that's literally the essence of it.
Something about every step, every choice.
And then it just becomes easier.
Yeah.
This is part of my tag along, like trying to do life, relationships, your body, yourself, like trying to do it right is a version of hell that a lot of us are walking around inside of.
Mm-hmm.
Because inherent inside of that is there's a wrong way, and I better not do it the wrong way, because I'm constantly inside of it trying to hustle and negotiate for my worth, value, make sure I get like manipulate. We're inside of that like hedonic treadmill, where it's like, okay, that didn't work. All right, that didn't work. That didn't work. That's hell. But when there's a place of like, this makes no sense. That's why when you were talking about like pathologizing and but none of that shit actually works. Not up front when your body is saying, but I want the thing I want.
Right. There's so much messaging, I think, especially in love relationships, about protecting yourself and guarding your heart and not getting your feelings involved.
Yeah.
And in my experience, that's always going about it sideways. Like even in doomed love affairs, the more open my heart is, the more quickly I get to move through the lesson.
Yeah. Yes. I cannot like agree with this more than I do. You would think that like, given how I'm passionate and stuff, then I'm just like, no, which sometimes there is, but like mostly when someone is involved with, and I talk about narcissism and schizoid personality disorder, and I know the nuances and what to do, and I have people when I'm talking in like the macro level, It's like, my macro message is like, do not get involved with people like genuinely don't get involved with people like that. But my micro, when I'm working with people one-on-one, is if you're in a deep, like if you're inside of the throes of it, there is a nutrient inside of that we have to mine, and you will not leave that until your system is ready to leave that. And I am like 100% behind that. I won't tell someone, like I have someone who sometimes people will come to me and they'll be like, oh God, I don't want to tell you about this relationship because you're going to tell me to leave. I'm like, no, I will not. No, I trust your system. Your system will leave when it's ready to leave. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to shove you out. No, we're going to love you inside this process, and you will literally organically, like in genuine resonance with yourself, let go in a place that has nothing to do with you being at war with yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this work. For the people who are just getting started, who are just hearing this for the first time, what's like a way in?
Yeah. All right. So I actually wrote these things down. So if you see me looking at this, because I have something written down. All right. So this is like 6 ways, and it's like literally a thing for you to, whoever's you out there, if you're listening, to be in more loving, more accepting, kinder, more thoughtful, more nuanced relationship to yourself. First, and this is going to sound like, first, identify what you're feeling. Most of us are inside of the story of what we're feeling and not actually what we're feeling. And what I mean by that is an uncomfortable thing will come up. And what we'll do is, it's because so-and-so, and we're just off to the races inside the story. Slow down, take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Am I really feeling upset? Am I feeling anger? Am I feeling hurt? Like, is it like actually spend some time getting to know what's actually happening in your system? Once you actually identify that, acknowledge and appreciate your emotion. Like, understand that emotion is something that is trying to love you, support. It might be doing it in a way that's like backwards, but it is actually trying to do something good for you. Even your self-hatred is trying to keep you safe. So acknowledge it, appreciate it, try to the greatest of your ability not to make your emotions wrong. Also, the next thing to do is to get curious about what the message of that emotion is offering you. So like, if you're inside of something, be curious, interrupt the pattern and just go, if you needed something right now, what would that need be? If you could make a noise, what would that noise be? Where is it exactly in my body? What's the feeling? What's the sensation? Just get curious about it. And if you had a voice, what would you say? That's a good one. If you could say anything, what would it be? The next thing is one of the quickest and simplest ways is to, when you're dealing with something like this, especially when you're inside the throes of what a jerk and a piece of shit and it's like, I do this thing and I hope, you'll indulge me inside of this. If you're alive and you are walking around doing you, trust me when I tell you that you have done already in your life extraordinary things. You might have done 50 things that you think that you're a jerk about, but when I tell you that you've done at least, 10 to 20 amazing things in your life, even if it's, I got out of bed when I felt like dying. I got out and I don't care I made the bed when I didn't feel those are, write a list. Remind yourself that I might have felt like shit in that moment. I might not have done it well, but you know what? I woke up and I at least spoke up. So reframe it in a way where you could actually see the courageous, deeply human, deserving of love and acceptance person that you are. Try to cultivate the gray inside of the black and white. remind yourself, this is number 5, remind yourself that you've done hard things before and that it might feel really challenging right then, but you actually have done hard things before, and that the future has something hopeful for you. And then finally, I don't care what it is, whether it's doing the dishes, vacuuming the house, washing your hair, brushing your teeth, going for a walk, calling a person, emailing, I don't care what it is, do an action. Do an action and then celebrate that action. Those are like 6, I like literally had to write, like those are 6 things that in real time to be with yourself and sort of like chain your way, like that's one part of the chain, that's another part of the chain, that's another part of the chain, that's another part of the chain, that will lead you to actually doing an action that feels in resonance.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. I hope that helps.
It does. It does. If people want to get in touch with your body of work, what are avenues they should explore?
Yeah, so I have started a YouTube channel, and it's called disorderlyconducts.com, or on YouTube. And I speak about narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and schizoid personality disorder. I also speak to a number of experts, and so there's interviews about that as well. And that's from someone who's had them from the inside and out, and then can speak to a little bit more coherently. Also, you can go to my website, which is actually under construction, but you'll be able to get in touch with me. It's www.ad as in Daniel, lifedesign.com. And then the other way is, of course, you can always reach out to me via Facebook or Insta. I'm available. I have a book that I'm currently writing. It's a 3-month self-study workshop that you do at home about cultivating rightness. And the other thing is a play. So you can keep an eye out and get on the mailing list if you'd like about hearing more about that.
Thank you so much again
for pleasure.
All your wisdom and for being here with us today. This has been such a joy.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. It's grounded me in a very busy day. So thank you.
You're so welcome.